Objective Analysis Bleach Edition. Let's get it. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about one of the members of the big three, of course, in Bleach. Now today's video we're going to be focusing on the manga version of Bleach because the final arc has not been animated, and there is one chapter that has just recently been introduced that may or may not have any value in terms of some of the things that we're going to be talking about, but we'll save that for later in the video, of course. And of course that means manga spoilers. If you have not been caught up with Bleach, keep that in mind, of course. Now the categories we're going to be talking about today are characters, plot, world building, themes, and art/animation. So without further ado, let's dive right into the video. As always, I like to start off with art because I think it's the quickest thing to talk about. And in terms of art, when it comes down to Bleach, it is absolutely stunning, especially considering the time that Bleach came out, when being one of the older series and longer series in shonen period. With that said, it has some of the most fire designs that you will see, especially for villains when it comes down to it, unique transformations. It just has very stellar art that you would enjoy compared to even today's standards of shonen series. Bleach, when it comes down to its art, is absolutely amazing and deserves a 9 out of 10. Next, we're going to be focusing on the plot itself. Now, the starting arcs is a lot of introducing the characters, which is pretty standard for the most part, as we get introduced to some of the main cast, of course, being Ichigo, Rukia, eventually Uryu, Chad, Orihime, and how they play into the story. When it comes down to it, the two biggest arcs and the two most notable arcs of Bleach ends up being the Soul Society arc and the Waco Mundo arc, and like I said, has a very repetitive formula with the main characters trying to save one of their friends from a villain, of course, Rukia and Orihime being those two individuals. And the characters become stronger as they fight the menaces, the opponents, of course, to save their friend, and some plot gets revealed, etc, etc. After that, the Fullbring arc is a definite change of pace, but I would say for the most part, a lot of people think it's relatively boring compared to its predecessors, and even though it has some very humanistic themes inside that arc itself, it doesn't live up to the hype compared to former arcs, although it has some decent fights and decent powers, of course. Now, the last arc, when it comes down to the huge war between Yuha, the Quincy's, and the Soul Reapers, that arc was huge, but it was definitely a mess. Very similar to the Naruto Final War arc, it definitely seemed rushed, with great high, great moments, and a very subpar ending. And finding out Ichigo gets married with Orihime, Ruki and Renji get married, have kids, the new captains. It's a good feeling ending that a lot of Bleach fans would enjoy. So with that said, Bleach gets a 7 out of 10 for me when it comes to its overall plot, but there are some hiccups that you can't ignore. Next is the characters of Bleach, and Bleach, just like Naruto, has some of the greatest cast of characters, period. Ichigo being someone a lot of people love as a cool guy who wants to protect his friends, very strong, not someone that you can truly hate as a main character because you get fascinated with his steadfast personality. Uryu is a bit underwhelming as a character who's supposed to be like the rival deuteragonist, but doesn't live up to the potential, but has some pretty cool moments. Chad is very underwhelming, and Orihime has great abilities, pretty much of a simp though, kind of like Hinata in that way. Ruki, on the other hand, is a very strong female lead, although if you really think about it and see the moments that she is in, it's definitely subpar compared to some of our more important characters at the end of the day. Maruki is still a fire character. So basically the main cast itself is not the strongest main cast of characters, but where Bleach shines is its villains and its side characters. The captains of Bleach have some of the best personalities and some of the most notable characters you will see in Bleach period. Kisuke Urahara, the genius among geniuses and the sensei among senseis. Yoruichi being one of the best female characters in shonen period. Toshiro Hitsugaya, Kenpachi Zaraki, Byakuya, Shunsui, top tier characters with unique personalities, unique abilities, and can hold their own when they're on screen. And then obviously the antagonists are top tier, with some of the best antagonists you will see in shonen, such as Aizen, one of the transcendent antagonists period. Ukiura, one of the best written characters when it comes down to villains. Grimjow, of course. Margon is a very good antagonist as well. Ginjo, Holly Bell, and of course some of the Quincies are notable, of course. Yuhan being a pretty good villain, even though I'm sure some people have his hiccups about him, and so on and so on. The characters in Bleach deserve credit, and that is why it gets a 9 out of 10. Next is the world building of Bleach, and for the most part the world focuses on 3 universes, being the human world, the Soul Society, Hell, and Hueco Mundo. I meant 4 universes, I don't know why I said 3. Now, the 3 of them has been focused on more so for the series, and one of them has been focused on in a movie and the most recent chapter of Bleach that has came out. The human world is very simple, it's just Japan for the most part, nothing really to dive into. They don't really dive into that, but what they do dive into more so is the Soul Society and Hueco Mundo. Soul Society being its own universe with its own structure, with the captains of course, and the structure of the Gote 13, of the Spirit King of course, and the Squad Zero and how that works, and all the other subdivisions as well. It really dives into that and how that works from a military perspective more so than anything else. Now they do talk about the Rukon district a bit and some other subparts of the Soul Society as well, such as the nobles of course, but it doesn't get dive into that much compared to the military at the end of the day. Whereas Hueco Mundo is very similar. They really only dive into mostly the higher echelon hollows that live there, such as the Espada and the Arrancar. Sure, there are other things in Hueco Mundo you could talk about as well, such as the forests and the Hoj universe with the sand, but they really only care about, for the most part, is the big hollows, stronger hollows at the end of the day. Now, the Hell is also a place that has been talked about recently, the movie touching upon it, whether you want to include that or not. But the newest chapter of Bleach, at the very least, has talked about the structure of Hell and how that will play into the bigger universe of Bleach going down the line. So at the very least, introducing that is something that should be talked about. And all 3 universes, or all 4 universes, are unique. The structures are fine and fire and dove into very well, as you really get a feeling of what these places are when it comes down to it. Another thing that I should mention when it comes down to the world building is the power system, because I said they are intertwined if you watch my prior videos. And the power system Bleach is very simple, it's nothing too complicated, as it focuses on the Soul Reapers, them transcending their swords and using their abilities relatively intelligently, but for the most part is based on who is stronger and whose abilities work best in that scenario. Kind of a cat and mouse game for most part, but it's basically the strongest person with the strongest ability that wins at the end of the day, with Shikais and Bankais being a huge component, but for the most part Bankais being most of the things that we care about later down the line. Now the antagonists have different ability that makes it interesting, with the introduction of hollows, hollow abilities, and Quincy's and Quincy abilities. Now there is also Kido, and Kido also gets used some of the times in the series with some notable characters such as Rukia, Byakuya, and of course Aizen that we can't forget about as well. So when they dive into those different things, it becomes pretty exciting, but for the most part we really only focus on the Soul Reapers and their abilities versus like a lot of the other opponents of course. I wouldn't say the power system's too complicated, but the abilities themselves are always unique and always fire and always amazing to see on screen. And let's not forget that the history of Bleach has been dove into a few times throughout the series. When it comes down to the substitute Shinigami, when it comes down to the Gote 13 in their past, it hasn't been dived into too much, and I do want more of it coming down the line, but it has been hinted at throughout the series at the very least. So after we talk about all the geography, history, and the power system, the world building gets an 8 out of 10. Last but not least is the themes of Bleach, and if we're being completely honest, the themes when it comes down to it is not something people remember much of when it comes down to it. Bleach is a series that you focus on the great abilities, the firefight, and the amazing designs, more so than anything else, obviously the great characters as well. The themes itself focuses on Ichigo when it comes down to protecting people because of his experience with his mom, but it doesn't really transcend the series in terms of big thematic points that stick with the audience at the end of the day. Sure, some die-hard Bleach fans will feel that more so than anything else, but the protecting your comrade type of scenario is very common in shonen and nothing too complicated nonetheless. Now, one thing that is talked about quite a bit is the pursuit of perfection, and that is very interesting, although it's not talked about a lot if we're talking about the totality of the series, compared to things such as Naruto, which has a big theme of the cycle of hatred and the cycle of pain, as that's a reoccurring theme throughout each and every arc of the story. So for the themes of Bleach, I give it a 6 out of 10. Nonetheless, not saying there aren't themes, and being higher than the 5 is at the very least notable, but they are not the strongest point when it comes down to Bleach and when you think about Bleach at the end of the day. Now with that said, this is the final rating of Bleach. Drumroll please. Bleach gets a 7.8 out of 10. Really good rating, and again, a pretty high rating compared to other series that we've talked about thus far. I know people are going to care about, okay, well, how does this compare to Naruto's rating? It's a bit lower than Naruto based on my analysis, of course. Naruto was an 8 out of 10, Bleach is a 7.8 out of 10, so there's a 0.2 difference at the end of the day, which is nothing too big. Now, Bleach can surpass Naruto because the benefit of Bleach that they has going on is the manga is returning, so more story can come out, which eventually transcends Bleach above Naruto down the line, and we can discuss that when time comes. But with that said, it's a very good rating. As you know, 10 is a masterpiece, 5 is average, and 1 being trash, and the 7.8 out of 10 is definitely on the higher echelon of series that I have personally enjoyed. So with that said, that is my objective analysis on Bleach. Next series will be One Piece, so stay tuned for that. Let me know your opinions about it in the comment section below. Take care and peace.